creators just revealed their matchmaking logic in the most in-depth way we've seen to date, and while they won't reveal all the trade secrets, we do have a good understanding now of how matchmaking works within the game. Today we're running down the new details revealed, as well as some key changes that have been made recently to help you better understand your own experience in-game. Drop your thoughts below, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and make sure to subscribe to stay updated with all things Arc Raiders, as we still have a lot to focus on after the May content update here. I'd love to have you in the community. Finally, check out my friends over at Advanced GG. We've recently launched some cool co-branded stuff, including a flavor that I'd highly recommend. Code Espresso can get you 10% off your entire order, but anyways, let's get into it. So let's take a look at this blog. This was formatted in a way that first explains the general basis of matchmaking, shares overall player data, and then goes on to some changes and myths about the game's experience. So let's check it out. This starts with a discussion of what they strive for. They said in the Rust Belt, the kind of raider you become should be up to you. Topside works because it's unpredictable. You can never be sure if you can trust the people you meet or how dangerous they might be. That freedom and uncertainty it creates is what drives tension, the encounters, and choices that make every run feel like it's its own story. At the same time, we don't want dedicated PvP players to constantly steamroll raiders who aren't as interested in PvP or who are still finding their footing. So our matchmaking is built around two goals: fairness and enjoyment. Fairness, they do their best to match players who have similar likelihood of succeeding in that round. One simple example, they prioritize equal squad sizes wherever possible. That was a change that at launch was solos and trios were prioritized, but then duos a couple of weeks later was prioritized in that same sort of logic. If you matchmake solo, you're likely to find other solos. If you matchmake as a duo, you're likely to find other duos, and well, same thing with trios. And then the enjoyment factor, they said they do their best to match players who are likely to have fun together. In practice, they've found that matching players based around playstyle drives enjoyment and reduces friction. But of course, all that to say, matchmaking time and latency is also one of those things that is a top priority, alongside that philosophy of how the matchmaking works. Then they described a little bit about the playstyles and how people actually engage with the game. They said, we take multiple factors into account when forming a lobby, one of the strongest being the playstyle across previous rounds, especially as it relates to how you engage with other raiders. It's important to understand that playstyles aren't binary. This isn't friendly versus shoot on sight, it's a continuous scale. They said some raiders are almost always cooperative, some almost only PvP, but most raiders fall somewhere in between. Then they gave a little bit of a sort of scaling system here in a graphic form that showcases what this looks like, to give a sort of depiction about what your matchmaking in that range of matchmaking looks like, the types of players interacting with it, and where you may fall in that distribution. So rather insightful to see, but they said what this does is that similarity is more likely but not guaranteed, and that your raider behavior shapes your future lobbies, gradually speaking. So the similarity they talk about, they say you have a higher chance of being matched with raiders whose past playstyles are similar to yours, and a lower chance of being matched with raiders whose playstyle is very different, but it's no hard guarantee. So coming back to that matchmaking profile distribution, they use the example of a more PvE style player, a more cooperative player, where they showcase that specific player is right in that peak of cooperative players. The likely range would only be a couple of deviations outside of those similarities with their playstyle, and then they show that unlikely match is being matched up with somebody that's incredibly PvP focused. You're not going to see that much based off of how they're describing this. They also said that that gradual behavior shaping is something that is a shift over time, that player behavior is influenced most likely but never locks you into a given experience. They also detailed though that on the flip side of that, it's not ever a hard guarantee. Again, you're not only going to be put into PvE lobbies, you're not going to only get in PvP lobbies, but there are tendencies that make those swing more often than not. Now, what I find fascinating about this matchmaking blog in particular is they detailed actual new matchmaking changes that they said are live now, which make these changes even cooler to hear about. But they said, based on community feedback, we've identified two major shortcomings in how we used to estimate playstyle, and both are getting addressed. Number one, defending yourself is no longer treated the same as starting a fight. Previously, your playstyle didn't capture whether you started a PvP encounter or merely defended yourself. This meant cautious raiders could be treated as more PvP focused than they actually were. Now, the two are treated differently. And before we go on to the next part, that is a huge update to the matchmaking changes, because that, since we've started talking about matchmaking right after the launch of the game itself, has been a pain point and a stressor for a lot of players. Listen, I don't know where you fall on the spectrum of PvE versus PvP, but it is something that the PvE style community was sort of questioning is it even worth defending yourself at that point if somebody attacks you, if you want to focus more on PvE? Like, obviously you don't want to lose the valuable gear you have, but at the same time, if it punishes you, that's something that sect of the player base was kind of like, we don't know, so what do we do here? So to have that now, not only one clearly defined, but also communicated that you can stick up for yourself if there is a raider that's attacking you, and it won't derail however you want to play, that's a huge change to how the, I guess, algorithm works with this. And number 2, they said low activity rounds carry less weight in your playstyle history. Rounds with little topside interaction like spawning and surrendering used to impact players' estimated playstyles more than expected. Reducing their weight helps the system reflect how you genuinely play when you're out there making choices. And that, listen, I get it. If you play solo primarily and you go and play squads with some of your friends, you play as a trio, but that trio, because the matchmaking and the way it works sort of weights you in more PvP heavy stuff, you want to get back into more PvE friendly lobbies, or vice versa. It could be entirely different like that. But one of the ways that players used to be able to do this was by going in and surrendering instantly. It was like 5 to 10 matches and it would basically air quote reset your matchmaking sort of MMR. But oppositely, that could be something that is abused in that sense, where players could end up doing that, getting into PvE focused lobbies and shredding PvE players as PvP players. So obviously it was a flawed system in how that worked, and now it's going to be something that does end up requiring you to adequately play the game, how you want to play, so that it ends up accurately reflecting that. I personally think that's a good change. Now, to close, they did talk a little bit about some myths, because as we've seen with matchmaking systems in the past, as we've seen with this game in particular even, a lack of communication breeds theories that, until you dispel them, can end up gaining traction that does more harm than good perhaps, or at the very least creates a placebo that changes the way you play, even though it doesn't really affect how you need to play. So let's run down a few of these. Number 1, there are not only 2 kinds of lobbies, friendly and aggressive. That's something that, as seen by the player distribution, you're going to see more so mixed lobbies more than anything else. They did detail it's actually a relatively even split between everything, where, I forget who it was, but somebody at Embark went on record and said that about 30% of players play more cooperative or PvE style, 40% are mixed, and then 30% are heavy PvP. So it is kind of an even distribution there, but it is a scaling system, as reiterated with this blog. Another one said that one shot or kill does not immediately put you in a PvP focused lobby, which is definitely nice to hear based off of, again, that new matchmaking parameter of defending yourself is no longer treated as starting a fight. So that means that if you don't fight raiders mostly, even if you do defend yourself, it's going to be nice. They talked about how there's no PvE only lobbies where raiders will never attack you. That's just the threat of being topside. In a game like this, it's really coming down to player choice. Somebody could end up ruining somebody's day, but you'll never know. And oppositely, in PvP focused lobbies, you're going to have people that try to be more cooperatively with those that are out to kill them. Now, that probably doesn't work too well in their favor, but it'll still happen. They said the end of round feedback does not affect matchmaking. Loadout does not affect matchmaking, where it says matchmaking isn't driven by your kit and we don't scale lobby difficulty based off of how your loadout costs. The only thing that they have mentioned about loadouts in the past is that free kits now are not necessarily as prioritized as custom loadouts when going into lobbies, i.e. free kits have a larger tendency to spawn late now compared to custom kits, as of, I want to say, like the Flashpoint update, but it was a change that's been enacted based off your loadout, but it doesn't affect the type of players you'll end up encountering. Another one is that patches and updates don't reset your matchmaking profile. That's something that, having been in like a season-long PvE lobby doing so much testing and stuff, I have seen that it does not reset, but I'd say if you're in those more mixed lobbies, updates and major patches like that bring more players back to check out the game, so you're just probably seeing a larger influx of players that are willing to end up PvPing or more willing to be cooperative, whichever way of the scale you end up leaning. Just a sort of law of numbers thing. They said looting knocked out players doesn't affect your matchmaking, so if you see a dead body and you're curious, that's not going to change anything for you. Matchmaking based on the squad leader is not a thing, which I feel like I haven't really heard too many people talk about that, but nice to hear that dispelled. I think the only thing when we talk about squads is that if you play solos to duos or trios, duos and trios are a tougher time to weight in terms of that scaling because you have multiple profiles that play into it. So solos might give you a very different experience than trios. Like, you probably won't be able to jump in with your friends as a PvE player and expect to get PvE lobbies. You're probably going to get a much more mixed, or depending on how your other party members play, it could be PvP heavy. And then finally, they said turning off crossplay does not impact the level of cooperation or PvP in that round, which makes sense. Again, it's player profile, not necessarily the type of player and platform you're playing with. But that said, that's where we're at here at this. This was actually kind of just out of the blue. I was not expecting to see this drop today and started crafting the content for the upcoming week here. but I'll certainly take it. I love these types of discussions about matchmaking. I love seeing a peek behind the curtain, and I think that from my perspective, like, more understanding of how the game works gives players a better experience. I personally believe that. I'm not sure if other people do, but I think having as much information in any topic about anything in life can allow you to have a more informed decision or experience for what you're engaging with. So I'll happily take this blog, but let me know your thoughts down below. What do you think of the matchmaking they detailed here? What do you think of the adjustments being made? And what do you think of some of these myths? Let me know. But if you guys enjoyed the video, you found it at all insightful, do me a favor and drop a like on it. And of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you subscribe to miss a single thing regarding all things Arc Raiders and even more FPS content I'd love to have in the community. But for now, thanks so much for watching. Mine has been Espresso. I'll see you later. Take care and peace.